Welcome to Standing on Business with Eric Foss. I'm your host, Eric Foss. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Standing on Business with Eric Foss. I'm your host, Eric Foss. All right, guys, today we're going to go into something. You guys, excuse my camera. My dog's messed it up. But we're going to go into something with a guy I was locked up with. And I was in the penitentiary with him. And when he got to the penitentiary, he actually had to become Muslim because he was going to get unalived by the black car. Let's just put it that way. The guy we're going to be talking about today, his name's Chucky Taylor, okay? He's from Florida. He was actually from Florida, but his father is actually Charles Taylor, who wound up he's from Liberia or whatever, and he wound up taking over the country, and he wound up getting Chucky to come over with him and run, they were chopping people's heads off. They were doing a lot of stuff. I'll get into all that. But first, let me read the Rolling Stone article about Chucky, okay? Now, this is a 2008 article, and it is called American Warlord. It is in Rolling Stone magazine. So let's get into it. And we're talking about the guy that we'll get into that I was locked up with. American Warlord. Chucky Taylor was an ordinary suburban teenager until he went to live with his father, one of Africa's most brutal dictators. How did a kid from Orlando end up as the first U.S. citizen on trial for torture abroad? So he was the first on trial for this. I did not know that. Chucky Taylor stood in the garage of a villa on the outskirts of Liberia's capital, gun in hand. Outside, crimson puddles of rain pocked the muddy red clay road to Monrovia. By Chucky's side was a spectacled figure named Benjamin Yaton, known as 50, to a legion of mercenaries and former child soldiers he and Chucky commanded. So look, just like the cartel, they start these kids young. In front of the two men, bleeding and terrified, was a university student accused of aiding a rebel army that was working its way through the jungle toward the capital. It was July 2002, and civil war had been rampaging through Liberia for 13 years, transforming one of Africa's oldest democracies into a ghoulish landscape. Drugged out militias manned checkpoints decorated with human intestines and several heads. And that's true. There was pictures of them holding up people's heads, their insides, everything like that. There was actually an incident with him where his driver, I don't know if they talk about it in the article, his driver accidentally put a dent in the BMW or whatever. He wound up unaliving the driver and giving the family some money just because they swerved out of the way of a dog. This got to his head. But remember, he was a kid. He was only like 18 or 19 when this happened. Okay. Women were R-worded and turned into sexual slaves known as bushwives. Wow. Enemies were disemboweled, cooked, and cannibalized. So they were actually eating people. All told, human rights groups estimate more than 600,000 Liberians were unalived, R-worded, maimed, or mutilated in the conflict. 600,000, guys. Think about this. In the midst of this reign of terror, Chucky was among the most feared men in the country. Only at 25, he created and commanded the anti-terrorist unit, the president's personal security force. Source of such pride that Chucky had the group's emblem, a crest of a hissing cobra and a scorpion tattooed on his chest. In the capital, he cut a terrifying figure, scattering crowds as he raced through traffic in a Land Cruiser with a license plate that read Demon. When he appeared in public, he was almost always outfitted in black or camouflage fatigues, a well-built figure strapped with a 9mm, a cigar in hand. His face, the dark eyes, the round cheeks, the neatly trimmed beard was immediately familiar to Liberians who had endured the long civil war. Not only because of his menacing reputation, but because of the man he so closely resembled, his father, Charles Taylor. Once again, crime, fathers, Gottis. This kind of stuff is just, we're going to get into all this as we get, further into our channel. So, Charles Taylor, this is the father, the president of Liberia, who had set the region ablaze with 4 devastating wars over the span of 2 decades. So 4 wars within 20 years. As the son of the president, Chucky was among the most powerful leaders in his father's military. But standing in the villa outside Monrovia, brandishing his weapon over his prisoner, he was long away from home. Only a decade earlier, Chucky had been an American teenager growing up in a modest two-story brick house with his mother and stepfather in a parched subdivision of Orlando, a short drive from Disney World. He had come of age in a strip mall landscape of payday loan shops and an endless parade of fast food joints. He attended Evans High School, a squat structure with the motto, a place of high achievement. He loved hip-hop and spent countless hours in his bedroom rapping, spinning records, preparing for the day he would enter the studio and become an MC. Like most American teens, he knew almost nothing about Africa, let alone its brutal and divisive politics. Of course, he doesn't know. He's over here. Now, standing in the villa outside Monrovia, Chucky leveled his gun at the helpless university student before him. He wanted information. His father's opponents were closing in on the Capitol on the brink of overthrowing the government. Where were the rebels? Who was providing them weapons? Were the Americans involved? There was little to keep Chucky from extracting the information any way he wanted. After all, he was a U.S. citizen. His father was president of the country. No one could touch him. Chucky was very much like the Hussein sons, says David Crane, the founding chief prosecutor of the Special Court for Sierra Leone. He was completely above the law, protected by his father and his henchmen. Okay. Chucky tried threatening the student with a gun. Then, as dawn approached, he and Yeaton began to torture the man. According to a 17-page federal indictment brought by the U.S. Attorney's Office in Miami, Yeaton, who is referred to as co-conspirator B, burned the student with a hot iron and doused him with scalding water. Chucky shocked the victim's genitals repeatedly with an electrical device. It was the kind of interrogation that those closest to Chucky had seen him conduct many times before. Chucky Taylor executed a lot of people, says retired Brig General John Tarnew, who served under Chucky in the anti-terrorist unit. So one of his guys who was serving under him, he said he unalived a lot of people and tortured a lot of people. In my presence, he tortured people. He tied them. He called it tebe, elbow to elbow, and twine went into the flesh. He'd sit there, cross his legs, and smoke cigars. He didn't touch them, but he gave them the order. He said, I want to see blood. Today, as his father stands trial, because this is from 2008, this article. I met Chucky probably 2010. Today, as his father stands trial for war crimes at the UN's court in The Hague, wherever that is, that's United Nations Court. His father, let me say something. His father actually, I think Naomi Campbell, the supermodel, she came and testified against his father, but not like against him, but he had actually gave her a huge diamond or something, and she came to court and testified that he definitely gave it to her. So, on September 15th, he will face trial as the first civilian. Chucky, we're going to talk about. Chucky Taylor sits in the Federal Detention Center in Miami. This is before I met him. On September 15th, he will face trial as the first civilian in American history to be charged with committing torture abroad. In phone calls and letters to me over the past 2 years, he has repeatedly denied the charges, implying that he is a victim of an American policy targeting his father. His conversations, like his letters, ramble, alternating between swagger and defiance and confused despair. At the very least, he suggests he is a victim of a bizarre double standard, prosecuted by the U.S. government that itself has engaged in torture in open defiance of the Geneva Conventions. So, he's just whatever. This is him talking to Rolling Stone. Innocence is not my dilemma, he wrote in March 2007 in a letter that covered 5 handwritten pages torn from a yellow legal pad, punctuated with the occasional smiley face. It is how do I prove my innocence and not make this intelligence gathering exercise for these cocksuckers in Washington? That's the challenge presented. Okay. They say absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. But there is no other government in the world that operates with more impunity than Washington and those that operated with its covert support. Well, Chucky's right, but guess what? You got yourself into some stuff. Now it goes into his mother. So basically, Emmanuel and Benson moved into a cozy apartment. This is when they had the son Michael. So Chucky, This is when Chucky was born. When him and his mother, he weighed 12 pounds. Chucky had gray eyes and a ghostly pale complexion. I guess somebody named Emmanuel had a white grandfather or something. So we'll keep going. So during his childhood, basically says, Chucky's father became a transient presence in his childhood. Put in charge of the General Services Agency, Liberia's main procurement office, Taylor ran it as his own private kingdom. He proudly displayed his newfound wealth, chauffeured around Monrovia, surrounded by bodyguards, grasping a small dog. Within a few years, accusations that he had pilfered nearly $1 million in state money forced Taylor to flee back to America, where he shuttled between New Jersey, Staten Island, and Boston. Every year he came back twice to visit the kids, says Emmanuel. He gave the kids everything they wanted. Now, this is the father we're talking about. In 1984, when Chucky was 7, U.S. Marshals arrested Taylor on an extradition request from the Liberian government. But Taylor conned a car thief into arranging his escape, breaking out of the Plymouth County Jail in Massachusetts, my guys up there if you know what Plymouth County is, and fleeing the country, never to return to the U.S. or his children again. It destroyed our family, Emmanuel says. So, he fled in 84 and never came back. So Chucky was 7. Emmanuel was Chucky's mother. So she wound up moving on with her life. In the 80s, she married a man named Roy Belfast and relocated the family to the brick home in Orlando. Chucky slept in a boat. So the mother tried her best. She tried her best, but let's go. Somehow, okay, his father gets a hold of him. Now, I don't want to read this whole article about the family and stuff, but okay. So later on down the road, the father starts to call Chucky frequently, eventually inviting the family to join him in Liberia. He seemed hurt by the separation, eager to reunite with his children. The next summer, Chucky traveled to Africa, where he and his mother and sister reconciled with Taylor after nearly a decade apart. The family arrived in Janarba, a small city in the Liberian bush outside of Monrovia. From there, Taylor ruled over Greater Liberia, the bush empire he had built over years of fighting in Liberia and Sierra Leone. This is the blood diamond stuff, guys. Taylor arranged for Emmanuel and their daughter to stay at a separate residence, but insisted that Chucky stay with him. At this point, it looks to me, and we're going to get into this too on the channel, he's grooming his son. He's grooming his son. He's like, come over here. You know, he's doing this. So I feel for Chucky in a way. And obviously, every kid looks at their father like he's a hero. And imagine looking at this guy. He's took over a country. So you're really looking up to him. At first, the boy from Orlando had trouble grasping that his imposing African warlord was his father. Taylor was surrounded by soldiers from his army, the National Patriotic Front of Liberia, some of whom went into battle in a sort of macabre burlesque, often cross-dressing in wigs and women's underwear, wearing amulets believed to make them impervious to bullets. The child soldiers called Chucky's dad Pape, Liberian slang for father. The country that they were fighting to control was conceived in America on December 21st, 1816 at the Davis Hotel in Washington, D.C. A group of prominent judges, congressional leaders, and clergymen had gathered to address what they saw as a growing problem: what to do with the increasing number of freed slaves. The group, which came to be called the American Colonization Society, engineered a novel solution: send the freed blacks back to Africa in hope that they will build their own country in an image of the new American Republic. It became America's first experiment in nation building. So, there's a lot of history here in this guy's case. I didn't know that. So basically, they just, they sent them to Africa, let them, and then this little country came about. Now, this is the country they took over. What followed remains an abject lesson in the perils of U.S. intervention. After securing a spit of land under the guns in an American naval escort, The settlers set about recreating an almost exact replica of the society they just left behind. The free slaves quickly assumed the role as master, exploiting the new nation's wealth in rubber, timber, and iron ore, and even selling the natives into slavery. After World War II, the U.S. began plying the small African nation with military aid and developing its infrastructure, even as Liberia's leaders became increasingly criminal in their disposition. So America's letting this shit go on. They're just giving money to dictators, basically, it looks like. By the time Charles Taylor emerged from the bush in the early 1990s, he was able to take advantage of long festering tribal animosities. Now, this is the father. Building his empire from the ashes of civil war, unencumbered by ideology, Taylor took whatever position served him best. To curry favor with tribal elders, he became a shaman. To win the sympathies of American religious leaders like Jesse Jackson and Pat Robertson, he became a Baptist minister. As his troops closed in on Monrovia, he also briefly gained acceptance from the U.S. government, in the words of former ambassador to Ghana and the Ivory Coast, Kenneth Brown, as the lesser evil for the greater good. He was calm, recalls Brown, who slipped across the border of the Ivory Coast to meet Taylor in June 1990. He was impressive. He had lived in the U.S. He looked like he was someone who was in control. Never mind that his bodyguards wore pearl necklaces and had painted nails. He seemed like the kind of warlord America could work with. Now back to Chucky. Chucky couldn't help but be impressed by his father's power and by the brutality of the civil war raging around him. After the reunion in Liberia, Chucky returned home, changed. He was defiant. He began to drink, smoke weed, and carry weapons, getting into confrontations with the police. In letters from prison, he dismisses the impact that exposure to Liberia's civil war had on him. My story is as deep and complex, and my story is a deep and complex one that encompasses different regions of this globe. And that's true. He said his childhood is but a fraction of his makeup. Okay, that's his high school sweetheart. Then at 16, he got arrested of obstruction of justice, things like that. So, basically what happens, and this is what I just read you a lot of the Rolling Stone article. You could go and look that up in Rolling Stone. It's American Warlord or whatever, 2008 article. I skimmed through that real quick for you guys, just to give you an idea of what went on here. Now, when Chucky wound up getting to Big Sandy, there was a problem. The problem was this Rolling Stone article. So, as you see in there, they were torturing people. Now, they didn't say this story in there, but I'll tell you one story that made me really look at him like a scumbag. And he told my cell buddy this story, and my cell buddy told me, and I was like, yo, keep this dude out of my cell. Well, what happens is they have drivers. Like you said, he drove around a Land Cruiser or whatever. And I guess it was a BMW. You know, something over here that's normal, but over there it's like they're so poor, like, oh my God, oh my God. So that's what his driver would do. His driver would drive him around. I'm talking about the son, the one I knew. So anyway, there was a dog in the road, and he swerved out of the way, and he bumped into something, and he put a dent in the BMW. Chucky took his head off, literally, or something like that. You know, I don't want to say too much. But anyway, people didn't look good on that. These were poor people. These were people, this was like kind of like a Hitler situation here. Now, his father was very well politically connected and everything, as you see. He took over the country. And he had some assistance from the United States along the way. But apparently something fell through because they smashed his ass. And he wound up getting life. And Chucky wound up getting, I think, like 90 years or something like that. I know he's got a long time, or he did when I was with him. But anyway, more into it. So when he gets there, the blacks don't like this. The black people are like, whoa, whoa, whoa. They're going to unalive his ass. There's serious people, you know, now it would be the down south car because he's from Florida technically. But what Chucky did was he became Hamza. He got in a Muslim car. So he became Muslim And that's how he got around. And plus, this was in another country, things like that. And some people looked at it like, whatever. But he became Muslim. Everything was, they looked at it as like everything, he's hands off for other cars or whatever. Now, he didn't have no, but in here it does say they were doing all kind of R wording and everything like that. But I don't know how he got out of that. Maybe he said he didn't do it. I don't know. Maybe they accepted it because it was another country or something like that. But you can't do that. Now, there is people in the pens and stuff like that. You could have been charged with sex offenses, have sex offenses, not been convicted. And even some who get convicted could walk, like a pimp. If a pimp goes in the penitentiary, he's a sex offender. If you got charged for pimping, you're a sex offender. But, usually with situations like that, you would have to, just like I got charged in 1998 with smacking the girl in the ass or whatever. And she didn't press charges. She was an old cocktail waitress. I was an adult. We were both adults. Where she didn't press charges. I didn't get convicted. But I kept a police report with me to show exactly what happened. That it was a bar fight, blah, blah, blah. So I'm all right. Even though I'm not convicted. So I don't know if he went along them ways because I'm not in them cars. But I do know he changed his name to Hamza and he became Muslim. Now, I had a cellie that was pretty tight with him. And they used to always do all that rolling around and, want to, do jujitsu and all that shit in the cell. I threw that shit out there. I said, nah, you ain't in here doing that shit. So he really didn't. He was a decent dude, like polite wise and stuff, like, because everybody is. But when you really dig down deep into it, he did some scumbag things. But also, I want you to look at the influence of his father. His father did this. And his father was a bigwig. Like Naomi Campbell came, I don't know if his father was banging her or what, but she actually came and testified at the trial that he gave her a huge diamond or whatever. But when he got there, I think realization hit him. This is America. America. You know what I mean? So people didn't like him, but he did change to Muslim. And when he was there, I didn't see him have no problems, but he wasn't a warlord. Let me just put it that way. Because nobody's a warlord in there. You're not tougher than the politics. You're not tougher than these other things. But like I want to get into, in the future when we do this stuff, I'm glad I did this real quick for you guys. And I hope you guys go read the whole article and stuff. But this has to do with where it starts, the grooming. You see how his father groomed him? He was just some kid over here playing hip hop music and all that kind of stuff and thinking he's a rapper. And his father said, whoa, look what I got going on over here. And he groomed him. And look what it led to. Father got life. He's doing life, basically. And a lot of hurt people, Very touchy subject. And it was touchy when he got to the penitentiary. But like I said, Chucky Taylor no longer exists. Now his name is Hamza. So he hopped in that Muslim car very fast. Okay? All right, guys. Until next time, just remember, always stand on business.